a moment when a club's entire defensive philosophy crystallizes into a single player for FC Barcelona. That moment has arrived again, and it walks onto the pitch wearing the number 18. His name is Gerard Martin. He is 24 years old, and right now, in the spring of 2026, he is the most quietly indispensable defender in Spanish football. Not because of a transfer fee, not because of a press conference or a headline number, but because of something far rarer in modern football. He was found in the lower leagues, shaped in the reserves, and handed the number 18 shirt by a manager who decided, mid-season, without announcement, that his future was no longer at left back, it was at center back. And that decision, quiet as it was, changed everything. At Camp Nou, the center back position has never simply been about defending. It is a statement about the club's identity, about composure under pressure, about reading the game 2 steps before it unfolds. For 3 decades, 3 men defined what it meant to wear that shirt and carry that responsibility. And right now, in the spring of 2026, a 4th has arrived. The first was Carlo Puyol. He joined La Masia at 17 from a small town in Lleida, arriving without fanfare, without a reputation, without anything except an intensity that coaches noticed immediately. Johan Cruyff had already left by then, but his philosophy had been embedded in the walls of the training ground. Every defender who passed through those corridors learned the same lesson. Defending begins with the ball. If you control possession, you control space. If you control space, you never have to defend at all. Puyol absorbed this completely, and then added something the philosophy had never quite demanded before: ferocity. He was not elegant, he did not glide. He threw himself into challenges with a physical commitment that bordered on reckless, and somehow always landed on the right side of the line. Under Louis van Gaal, then under Frank Rijkaard, he became the captain Barcelona had been waiting for. He was not the best technical defender the club had ever produced. He was something more important. He was the one who made every other player around him believe that the line would hold. Under Rijkaard and then under Pep Guardiola, Puyol lifted 3 Champions Leagues, 6 La Liga titles, and 2 Copa del Rey trophies. He captained Spain to the 2010 World Cup and Euro 2008. When he finally retired in 2014, after a body that had given everything began to give out entirely, the question was not whether Barcelona could replace him. It was whether the concept of replacing him was even coherent. Puyol did not invent the Barcelona center back. He invented the idea that a Barcelona center back could be the most important player on the pitch without ever touching the ball in the final third. The answer came from Manchester. Gerard Pique had left La Masia as a teenager, sent to United because Barcelona could not guarantee him a pathway past Puyol. He spent 4 years in England, won the Champions League under Ferguson, and returned in 2008 for €5 million, a fee that, within 18 months, looked like the most misjudged valuation in the history of the transfer market. Where Puyol had been defined by intensity, Pique was defined by intelligence. He read the game from a different plane entirely. He could stand in the wrong position and still intercept the pass, because he had already calculated where the pass would go before the player in possession had decided to make it. Under Guardiola's system, which demanded that defenders act as the first line of build-up rather than the last line of defense, Pique was not just useful, he was irreplaceable. For 12 seasons, he defined the position. He won 8 La Liga titles, 3 Champions Leagues, and a treble in 2015 that many still consider the greatest single-season performance in the club's history. He was named in the UEFA Team of the Year 4 times. He retired in 2022 with a record that placed him among the finest center-backs the game has ever produced, alongside a playing style that had genuinely expanded what the position was understood to be. Pique took what Puyol had built and turned it into something technically unrepeatable. He was not a defender who happened to pass well. He was a passer who happened to defend. Between these 2 giants, there was a third figure whose influence on the position was quieter, whose legacy was less celebrated in the noise of titles and individual awards, but whose contribution, when measured carefully, was as significant as either. His name was Rafael Marquez, El Kaiser de Michoacán, the first Mexican to play for FC Barcelona, and the man who carried the position through the 7 years between Cruyff's legacy and Guardiola's reinvention. Marquez arrived from Monaco in 2003, the same summer as Ronaldinho. While the Brazilian immediately became the face of a new era, Marquez became its backbone. His technical quality was unlike anything the club had seen at center back. He could play out from the back under pressure with the composure of a midfielder. He could carry the ball into space. He could switch the play with a single long diagonal that changed the shape of the game entirely. Rijkaard trusted him so completely that when injuries decimated the midfield in 2004-05, he moved Marquez there without hesitation, and the team kept winning. He started and played the full 90 minutes of the 2006 Champions League final against Arsenal in Paris. He won 4 La Liga titles and 2 European Cups. He made 242 appearances for the club across 7 seasons, a record for a non-European player that stood for years. And then, in 2022, he returned to the club's ecosystem, not as a player, but as the head coach of Barça Athletic, the reserve team, the place where the next generation of Barcelona defenders are formed. It was there, in 2023, that he first worked with a 21-year-old who had just arrived from Cornellà, a left-footed defender, 186 centimeters tall, composed under pressure, comfortable in possession. A player who had never played for a major academy. A player nobody outside the scouting department had heard of. His name was Gerard Martin. Marquez did not just bridge 2 eras of Barcelona defending. He became the coach who identified the player who would define the next one. Gerard Martín Langreo was born in Barcelona on February 26, 2002. He grew up in Sant Andreu de la Barca and passed through AF Performance and Sant Gabriel before arriving at UA Cornellà, where he eventually forced his way into the senior side. He was not a La Masia product in the conventional sense. He had not grown up sleeping in the academy dormitories, watching Puyol posters on the wall. He was found later, shaped differently, and brought into the system through a side door that most players never find. In July 2023, Barcelona signed him to a 2-year deal with Barça Athletic. He arrived as a left back. That was his position, his identity, the role he had always played. At 186 centimeters, he was tall for the position, but that was not unusual. What was unusual was something Marquez noticed almost immediately in training. The way Martín defended centrally, the way he read crosses, the way he positioned himself in a back 3 as naturally as if he had always played there. He was not a left back who could fill in at center back in an emergency. He was a center back who had spent his career playing left back because nobody had asked him to do otherwise. On August 17, 2024, Hansi Flick handed Martin his La Liga debut against Valencia at Mestalla, bringing him on as a left back in the 63rd minute of a 2-1 away win. In Flick's first season, Martin made 42 appearances across all competitions, including 28 in the league and 8 in the Champions League. He scored his first professional goal on March 2, 2025. Barcelona won La Liga that season. He had collected a title in his debut campaign without anyone quite noticing how good he had become. 5. The transformation. 2025-26. The 2025-26 season began with a decision. Flick, watching his squad in preseason, looked at Martin and saw something that the statistics had not yet confirmed and the headlines had not yet registered. He moved him to center back, not as a stopgap, not as rotation cover, as a first-choice option in the back line, a player trusted to start in the Champions League, to defend against the best forwards in Europe, to initiate the build-up from deep with the same authority that Pique had once made look effortless. Martin responded with the performances of a player who had been waiting for exactly this moment. This season, only Jules Koundé, Eric Garcia, Pau Cubarsí, and Alejandro Balde have logged more minutes among Barca's defenders. His interventions per 90 minutes have risen from 33.2 to 58.3. His passing accuracy has climbed from 85 to 90%. His aerial duels won, his clearances, his recoveries. Every metric that defines a center back operating at the highest level has moved in the same direction, upward, consistently, without plateau. The versatility remains. When Balde requires rest, Martin slides to left back without any structural adjustment. When the back three needs a composed left footer with the physicality to dominate set pieces, he is already there. Flick has described him as one of the most tactically intelligent defenders he has worked with. A player who understands the space around him before the ball has moved. A player who makes the right decision, not because he is fast enough to correct mistakes, but because he rarely makes them. There are things money can't buy. Gérard Martin on live television, rejecting Real Madrid. In January 2026, a formal offer arrived from outside Spain. Martin rejected it without hesitation and said so publicly in terms that left no room for interpretation. He is not at Barcelona because no better offer came. He is there because he chose it, and because the club chose him, and because that alignment of intent, so rare in modern football, is producing something worth watching every week. The number in the title of this piece requires a brief explanation. It does not represent what Barcelona paid for Gérard Martin. It represents what the clubs who tried to sign him this season were prepared to pay. It represents what a player of his profile, his age, his positional versatility, and his Champions League experience costs in the market that Barcelona's rivals navigate every summer. It is the number that Declan Rice cost Arsenal. It is the number that Moises Caicedo cost Chelsea. It is the number that the market charges for the type of defender Martin has become. Barcelona paid nothing. Or rather, they paid in the currency the market cannot manufacture. Years of patient development, a coaching staff that identified the right player at the right moment, and a manager who looked at a left back from Cornella and decided, without external pressure or commercial logic, that he was looking at a center back. Puyol invented the identity of the position. Pique expanded what the position could be. Marquez bridged two eras and then, in the quietest possible way, identified the player who would define the next one. And Gérard Martin, with his composure, his reading of the game, his willingness to be transformed by a coach who saw something in him that the market had not yet priced, is making the case week by week in the spring of 2026 that the line continues. The center-back position at Camp Nou has always been more than a defensive role. It is a statement of what the club believes football should look like. Right now, that statement is being made by a 24-year-old from Sant Andreu de la Barca who arrived through a side door, stayed when he did not have to, and is building the kind of career that Puyol, Pique, and Marquez would each, in their own way, recognize as their own.